Hello, this is Johnny from securitytutorials.co.uk, and this is my tutorial on Nmap. So what is Nmap? Nmap is the network mapper, and this is the de facto scanning tool in the hacking community. It's available in various UIs and operating systems. It scans for live hosts, operating systems, and open ports. It's available for Linux, Windows, and Mac OS X. Nmap is the GUI version for Nmap. The usage for Nmap. Basically, it goes like this: in your Linux terminal, Windows terminal, or Mac terminal, you would type in Nmap, you'll scan type, the option, and the target specification. You would use the greater than sign to output it to text. This is in version 6.0 and above, I believe. You would type in nmap-s capital P 10.0.0.2 greater than file.txt. The target specification, you can pass host names, IP address, networks, etc. Scanme.nmap.org is a great place where you can test your scanning abilities, and read it in scanme.nmap.org is obviously for you to test. 10.0.0.1 scans a 24-bit subnet, so it'll scan all the computers on your subnet. 10.0.0.1 through 255 scans all the IP addresses between 1 and 255. You can also do 10.0.0.1 through 10. Example would be nmap-ss 10.0.0.1/24. So what are networking ports? You need to understand this in scanning. There are two different protocols. There are TCP and there are UDP. TCP is commonly referred to as a connection-based protocol, and it requires a formal connection, which is the three-way handshake. If you don't know what that is, you can go to my introduction to scanning on my website or on YouTube, which this is the SYN, SYN-ACK, and ACK. UDP is often referred to as a connectionless protocol, and the reason why it's called connectionless is because it does not require a formal connection. It doesn't worry about traffic flow, and this is commonly fading out. Now, these are the common ports that you should memorize as a hacker or a penetration tester. Common ports would be port 21, which uses TCP, and this is FTP. Now, this is unencrypted, you don't need to know that, but 22 is SSH, 25 is SMTP, 53 is DNS, port 80 is HTTP, 161 and 162 is SNMP, 443 is uses TCP and it's HTTPS, which is SSL, or the Secure Sockets Layer. 880 is an alternative HTTP. I will include the document of the common ports on my website. Here are the different scanning options. -O detects the operating system. Now, what this does is it detects it based on signatures, because each operating system responds differently to packets, but this is very noisy and easily detected by IDSs and IPSs. -V is version detection, and this will detect the version of the program or service running. And an alternative to this would be Telnet, the IP address, and the port. So Telnet 10.0.0.2, port 80. So these are the different scans. -SP is a ping sweep. Now Nmap gives you the option of using different types of ping sweep. The default is ICMP, but you can also use TCP-SYN and TCP-ACK. I will include an Nmap cheat sheet that will give you all the options. -PN skips host discovery, and it does not do this right here. So it skips that and it just assumes it's online. -SA uses an ACK scan. -ST is a TCP connect scan, which is a noisy full TCP connect scan, which uses the three-way handshake, the SYN, SYN-ACK, and ACK. This is very noisy and long scan, but it's very reliable. The -SS is a stealthy SYN scan, and it uses a partial TCP three-way handshake, and it's also very quick. I like using that scan. These are the scans that are very effective with Linux and Unix-based operating systems, but Windows doesn't know how to handle these very well, and I guess it's sort of an extra security feature within Windows. -SF is a fin scan, also commonly referred to as an inverse scan. This bypasses stateful firewalls, which has a list of IP addresses which can access. the server per se. -SX is an Xmas scan, and the reason why it's called this is because it sort of lights up in the Christmas tree. Now, if you open up Wireshark, which is a packet capturing software, it'll sort of light up like a Christmas tree. -SN is a null scan. If you know programming, null is basically nothing, and it sends no parameters over. The -SU is a UDP scan. Now, this is a very long scan, but if you do -SS, it'll look for TCP ports, but it won't look for UDP ports. So it's also important to do this to say if you're looking for an SNMP port. The -SL verifies your subnet. -SP-PP. Now this sends an ICMP timestamp request. Now what this does, it evades ICMP blocking firewalls. Usually firewalls just block standard ICMP packets. Now this is sort of a way to get around it because the -PP sends a timestamp request ICMP packet. Now there are different types of ICMP packets, but I won't go over this. And it evades IDSs and IPSs. So stealthy scans. Nmap gives you a lot of options for evading IDSs and IPSs. A good one for this is -T and then the number you want, and the number can range from 0 to 5. And what this does is it sets a timing for scanning and says what time should I scan in between each IP address or packet. Now basically the slower the better, it'll give you less false positives. Here are the times right here. 0 is paranoid, 1 is sneaky, 2 is polite, 3 is normal, 4 is aggressive, 5 is insane. These are sort of within the words. Paranoid is extremely slow, and you should only use it when you're paranoid, because it takes forever. 3 is normal, it's a normal scan. 5 is insane, which is really, really fast, and IDSs will be able to pick that up because it looks very predictable. -F fragments the packets. And what it means by fragments the packet is that it splits up the individual packets, and when it gets to its destination, it puts it all together, and then it replies as necessary. Now, this is good for IDS or IPS evasion, but recently I've heard that IDSs and IPSs will stack up these fragments, it'll look at them, and then it'll send it off or block it based on if it looks suspicious, and obviously if it's fragmented, if it's a fragmented scan, and when it puts it together it'll realize it's a scan. So this is the side channel attack, and what this does is it spoofs the source IP in order to get a response. Now the reason why it works like this is because, say if you try to access facebook.com, you would request for that site, but say if you want to remain anonymous, you would send out a spoof IP to access that thing. Well, this is the reason why it's pointless, because Facebook will go, okay, well here's the website, and then it'll give it to the spoofed source. So if you spoof, you won't elicit a response from your target. So I'll show you how this is useful. And here's a usage of this. It's nmap-pn, which is skip host discovery. -P searches for all ports. -S capital I is a side channel attack, and you would put in the zombie IP and the target IP. Now this is your zombie right here, and this is your target right here. You definitely want something that has that's very quiet on the network, and the reason why a printer is a good example of this is because usually printers just sit in an office and they don't do much. And I'll tell you why this is important in a minute. So after the attacker types in this, what happens is the attacker will first do a SYN ACK, and it will try to establish a connection to the printer. Well, the printer says, I don't want to talk to you, I'll send you a reset packet to stop the three-way connection. And then this is why it's important. When the RST packet is sent, it sends an IP identifier of 1000. Now pay attention to this. So what the attacker does is says, oh okay, I've got the IP identifier now. So what I'll do is I'll send a SYN with the zombie IP. This is the zombie IP right there. So what he's doing is spoofing the IP address so that instead of connecting back and it'll be able to trace back to him, what he does is he sends it over there and tells the server to connect to it so that it can connect to this. So when it sends the spoofed IP address, SYN, the server goes, okay, well I'll send a SYN ACK to the printer. But the printer says, well, I don't want to talk to you, I'll send an RST packet back with the IP identifier of 1001. So this incremented from the 1000. So when this happens, the attacker goes, okay, well I'm going to try establish a connection with the printer again. So the sixth step is the SYN ACK, sends a SYN ACK over to the printer. The printer says, well, I don't want to talk to you. It sends an RST packet with an IP identifier of 1002. Now if you look at this, you've got 1000, you've got 1001, and 1002. What this did was it incremented predictably, which means obviously when you sent the SYN scan over there and it did all this, that means the port was open. So what would happen if the port is closed? Well, when this happens, you get the IP ID of 1000, you send it over. Well, then it doesn't do this, and therefore it doesn't get the IP identifier of 1001. So when it doesn't do this, instead of getting, when you connect to it again, instead of getting 1002, you'll get 1001, which obviously means it's a closed port. This is good for remaining anonymous and is very useful. Just remember that you use something that is actually on the network and also that is very quiet on the network. So an example of an Nmap scan. Now this was a quick Nmap scan that I used on Metasploitable, which is a virtual machine you can get online for practicing your penetration testing skills. And so you would type in your Linux terminal. You would go right here, this is your Linux terminal, and you would type in nmap, you would type nmap-ss 10.0.0.2, and as I said, the -ss is a SYN scan. So what it does right here says scan report, host is up. Now why does it say that? The reason why it says that is because you did not skip the host discovery with a -pn. So it checks if the host is up first, and if it says it's down, it won't do the scan, and you can do this when it gives you a false positive of saying it's down. So what this does is it checks for the open ports. Now I didn't specify the version, but I could do this by do -ss -v, or I could append it to the -s, so I could do a lowercase s, uppercase s, and a v. It's just easier, but you can do this. So this is just a -ss, so it identified the open ports. 21, if you were paying attention before, that is FTP. 25 is SMTP. 53 is DNS, or domain. And 59,000 is VNC. That's not a common port, but it identified it as that. And it tells you the MAC address. And this is what scans will look like in Nmap, and you can do different scans. So this is the Nmap cheat sheet by securitybydefault.com. This is the Nmap 5 cheat sheet. The updated version today is Nmap 6, but a lot of the options are still available. And you can just check the manual for Nmap if you need help. This is just a very useful PDF that I use. And I will include it on my website, so you can go to my website and download the PDF if you like. Or you can go to securitybydefault.com. Thank you for providing that. Let me just go over this really quick. -ss is a TCP SYN scan, TCP Connect scan, and a UDP scan. I told you about that before. -p- stands for scans all the ports. Now Nmap generally only scans for the common ports, so when you just do an nmap-s capital S, it'll look for all the common ports, and -p- scans for all the ports, or you can do a range of ports, which is -p, say port 12443. The timing and performance, I told you about this. T0 is paranoid, T1 is sneaky, Now you can set a min rate and a max rate, and what this is that it will give you a random amount of time between the min rate and the max rate, and what this does is when it's random, it sort of looks like network traffic, and the thing is IDSs and IPSs won't pick this up as suspicious. Now -SV is banner grabbing and detects the version, -O is OS detection, -S is fragmenting the packets, S is spoof the source address, which is what happens during the side channel attack. And remember, you won't elicit a response from that. The -D, D1, D2 is cloak the scan with decoys, and what this does is it sends out decoy scans with spoofed IP addresses, and therefore the people who look at the IDS or IPS logs and says, let's find out who scanned our system. Well, if there are tons of decoys, well, they won't be able to detect which one actually did it. -- spoof MAC, MAC spoofs the source MAC, -G spoofs the source port, and I told you before that you can output it to text using the greater than sign. Well, thank you very much for watching this video, and remember to visit securitytutorials.co.uk. Thank you very much.